welcome back to It's an Inside Job podcast. I'm your host, Jason Lim. Now, this podcast is dedicated to helping you to help yourself and others to become more mentally and emotionally resilient so you can be better at bouncing back from life's inevitable setbacks. Now, on It's an Inside Job, we decode the science and stories of resilience into practical advice, skills, and strategies that you can use to impact your life and those around you. Now, with that said, let's slip into the stream. Well, welcome back to the show. It has been a week since we've last spoken, and I've missed your company. Well, this week I have another great guest lined up for you. So I'd like you to welcome today's episode where we will have the privilege of sitting down with a seasoned executive and global leader, Marc Siles. Now, with over 5,000 hours of coaching experience with clients from over 25 nationalities, Marc is a true expert in strategic leadership and individual group transformation processes. He has a passion for developing high-performance teams that drive innovative leadership capabilities to accelerate growth. In this episode, we'll not only delve into Marc's approach into developing disruptive strategies, deploying them in human-centric ways, and creating self-autonomous high-performance teams that accelerate growth, but also explore the importance of building resilience in oneself and in others. Marc will share with us his insights on how to align short-term goals with long-term strategic objectives, how to help teams develop contingency plans for VUCA situations. And if you may not know, VUCA is an acronym for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And we also talk about the importance of having growth mindset for learning and resilience. We'll also discuss the significance of self-awareness and self-leadership and the importance of emotions on how we can learn from them. As a former senior executive, Marc will also share his experience on how it has informed his approach to coaching and mentoring ambitious teams. So whether you're a seasoned executive or just starting out in your career in the game, well, sit back, relax, and get ready to gain insights that will help you become a more resilient, self-aware, and compassionate leader. So let's slip into the stream and meet the brilliant Marc Siles. Well, welcome, Marc. Welcome to It's an Inside Job podcast. I was wondering, maybe we could begin the conversation by you introducing who you are and what you do.
Hi, Jason. Thanks a lot for having me with you in your podcast. It's been, it's an honor. I've been listening to some of your chapters, and I really like them and I enjoy them. So it's great to be able to be in one of your podcasts. Usually, like I just said, that my name is Marc, originally from Barcelona, city that nearby Barcelona. But anyway, everybody knows where Barcelona is. But I've been living the last plus 20 years in Finland, and I work all over the world, basically. So that's my short intro. The long version of that is that, I was studying in Sweden some years ago in my early 20s. And, I met somebody, I moved all the way to Finland. And then I just decided to stay here because of enjoying the kind of life and experience of being in Nordics. I dedicate my time, actually, the reason why I do this more than what I do, it's linked very early stages on my young years. I was about 3-4 years, and even my parents told me that it's impossible that I remember that, but I do. And as I still recall, like one day, my mother took me to meet to pick up my father from work. My father was working in sales, and I still recall that day that when I opened the door of that meeting room and I saw my father in front of 50, 60 people giving this speech, and everybody just totally pumped up and just shouting and going like, whoa, going crazy. And I recall I really recall saying to myself, like, okay, I don't know what is going on. I don't know what he's doing, but when I grow up, I want to do something like that. I want to be able to inspire people. I want to be able to give that self-confidence to people that I was seeing that my father was communicating at that stage. And that stick with me for many, many years. So after that, I've just been going after my dreams. I say usually I'm from Barcelona, but the town where I'm from, it's a very small, 15,000 people town. So a really small place called Berga. And as a kid, I always wanted to do something else, to go beyond the basics, and especially because my teachers told me that wasn't possible. That hey, were telling me, Marc, just calm down. There's no reason why you should be, going after your dreams, stay here. And actually I was even bullied by them, but let's not talk about this now. But I just didn't want to believe them. So at some stage, I just decided to go after my dreams and go after an international career. And I've been spending the last 10 years traveling all over the world, working with different companies, enabling especially cultures to transform into empowered leaders. To empower leaders to drive the transformation that they want to achieve, especially like helping them with growth mindset, empowering different levels within the company to drive the transformation and just go beyond what it could be achieved by doing business as usual. So a lot of team coaching, individual coaching, and especially I've been enjoying a lot working with different cultures. I've been working with these kind of transformational projects all over the world. I've been working in China. I've been in Thailand, I've been in India and Japan, all over to the US, Canada, Nordics, Europe. So I've been enjoying a lot the last years, be able to travel and meet different cultures and teams, helping them on all these type of transformational leadership and cultural topics, especially related to the strategy. I forgot to say that, but it's all about how can we achieve more, focusing on achieving, how can we grow by achieving things together, focusing on the company's strategy.
And I think what you do is important in the midst of, the geopolitical tensions we have, energy crisis, the war happening on the edge of Europe. All of these affect companies, logistics, strategy, everything. And so when you're saying empowering leaders, it's to try to help them to figure out how to face the unknown uncertainties, the unknown chaos. I was wondering, what is your perspective when it comes to strategy? Because I know you describe yourself as a disruptive thinker, and where you work with transformation, growth mindset, strategy, and empowering leaders. Have you seen a shift in the conversations that you have with companies, not just in Finland, but globally?
Yes, I have seen that. First of all, it's very interesting where you talk about the uncertainty we have around. Most of us have heard about the VUCA environment where we are at the moment, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And there's nothing that produces more anxiety, as you know better than myself, than those four factors together, right? When we don't know what's going to happen, but there's uncertainty about the future. When there is ambiguity, even about the future, that's one of the main sources of anxiety and stress. So it's not just only about strategies and what the company can achieve. It's also about human growth, because the capabilities of a company are going to be limited, or the growth capabilities are going to be limited to their human capabilities. So all starts from there. And the more anxiety and pressure there is on people with the level of uncertainty, the more impaired the company is going to be. Not just to scale their business, but also to scale their culture, their culture. When you were talking about collapsing, the dialogue is there. Usually I talk about, a tradition that is in my hometown. Some of you might have heard about this thing we do in Catalonia called human towers, where, we just like to climb on each other. I don't know, have you seen it, Jason? But it's a very interesting hobby, and we take it very seriously.
I've seen it, but I've never done it.
Okay.
When I'm in Barcelona, I've usually seen the architecture, walking the streets, eating the great food, not building human towers, but hey.
It's part of an architecture as well, like to build a human tower.
Yeah, okay.
But there is three, because you need to understand also the basics of building, right?
Sure.
To have a solid base and go all the top.
Well
said.
Actually,
there is like three factors that we can learn, three different dimensions. We can learn a lot from that exercise of building human towers for what you were asking. And usually I say that, when people ask me in companies and start to wonder and create a dialogue about what can we do about it, usually I talk about these human towers and I tell them, like, look, one thing that everybody has in this human tower is a PhD. And they were like, what do you mean a PhD? Like, wait, stop, hold your horses. Let's stop assuming that we understand what a PhD is. A PhD for me, Jason, is basically three things. It's passion, hunger, and drive. That's what the PhD means. Everybody in the tower, first of all, when they are building it, have the passion to have common goals. First of all, that passion is the common goals that everybody has together, which means that they understand what they are trying to build. They have a common objective. And that's why they start to do what they do. Because that is the inner purpose of, we want to do a human tower, build a human tower. But it's not just about that. They also have the H of the PhD, which is hunger. And that hunger is the ambition to be the best, because, hey, it's a competition. Huh? It's about being the best. There's a competition, it lasts many months, and the one that builds gets the more points through this Human Tower League gets the big prize. And it's it's a big thing in Catalonia. So it's not just about having a common goal, it's also about having that hunger and shared ambition to want to be the best. And this is the first two components that helps the companies and teams to bring alignment. And maybe this is one of the things that is missing the most at the moment. Like before we try to do anything, before we try to solve any problem, before we try to implement an action plan, are we aligned? Do we have this shared passion about why are we doing this? And do we have hunger to be the best at what we do? And this is extremely linked to resilience and growth mindset, because when you have those two elements in place, what you make sure is that after things don't go well, when you start failing, when things get rough, you make sure that you stand up and you continue the journey. Without those two elements, then you quit. I've seen that happening over and over again. Companies start, they get their plans, all that stuff, and because there's no passion, there's no hunger to want to be the best, when things start to go south, they quit. And that creates a lot of false starts within many initiatives and many growth transformations.
I think when it comes back to, as you said, it comes back down to human capability. That human capability, or using that acronym, or you using your vernacular of passion, hunger, and drive. I think those are definite, core elements to the DNA of a functioning company that's able to drive forwards even in the midst of VUCA or, volatility, uncertainty, ambiguity and such.
Right.
It's normal that when we move into uncertain times, self-doubt tends to come. And you spoke about passion. Passion is truly believing in what the company does. I'd like to talk about those in relation to resilience and growth mindset. When it comes to passion, you truly need to believe in what you're doing. But when you come across it, do you work across teams, or do you work with just the leadership team that pushes the company forward, or do you work through levels? How do you ignite the passion? Because some people, unfortunately, some people just show up for the paycheck. Some people just show up to do the job and they go home. In those, how do you trigger that passion to bring people together, to create that cohesiveness?
That's a great question, Jason. And that relates to the third dimension, the drive. And that drive of the PhD, it's addressed in two different folds. First of all, has to be the leadership team. Some companies, they call it executive team, whatever you want to call yourselves. But it's the C-suite, the top team that has to understand what is this image, what is this identity they want to transfer. The passion and hunger. First of all, is the top layer. Are we fully aligned? Do we understand what we want to create? Do we understand the legacy we want to leave behind, beyond the budget, beyond the figures? So that's the first element, to understand, which is this top layer. So that's related to the drive. Why? Because very soon after I start working with aligning the top executive, it is time to start to empower the rest of the company, because they cannot do it themselves. It's a combination. It's 50%. 50% is how the leadership can become more of a transformational leader than transactional leaders, to communicate the vision, inspire others, and create that spark. But then the drive is like, how do you enhance the attitude through the company to be able to create these teams of people that, like in the human towers, Jason, it doesn't matter how high you are in the tower, you better take care of the shoulders that you're standing on. Because if you don't do that, those towers fall. And they do fall. If you search in YouTube, you will see, those towers falling. And especially you have to be careful, because the ones at the top are kids. And the ones at the bottom, they are stronger, bigger people. Because, you cannot send a 100 kilos person 20 meters high, right? So you need you need all sorts of people to be able to build that tower. So the leaders have to understand first from the top that you need these sorts of people. You need to nurture them, and you need to take care of them, like in the human tower. You need to take care of the shoulders you're standing on and become a good sparring partner for them to nurture their growth. And then after they are there is when I start to grow, to grow people. I say to grow people because that's what I say. I don't train people. I grow people. We call this concept growth agents. And it's basically how to empower not just managers, but how to empower catalysts through the company that are focusing not just on the strategy growth and how to enable solution-focused mindset and how to cope with uncertainty. So, we teach them techniques and different tools to become more resilient and to cope with this uncertainty. But as well, how can they also empower other people? So how can people themselves become catalysts for growth for other people, to have these abilities to spar and coach with other peers at work? So you have those two elements in place, a top leadership that is more transformational, inspiring others with this passion, hunger, and drive, and then enabling them and giving them the tools to become good at solving, developing solutions, solving problems, and also coaching, inspiring other people through the whole company. Then you have the magic solution, but you need to trust them. You need to create this psychological empowerment through the company and allow them to make mistakes, allow them to feel comfortable with trial and error, and especially allow them to concentrate in the short-term steps. Something I noticed that brings and calms down a lot of anxiety in company is when they have clear the long-term vision, but they can focus on the short-term steps. For some reason, the more certainty you can bring to people, the less anxiety and stress there is. So the more we can focus on the short-term steps, always aligned, the kind of thing of a one step at a time. It's easier to run 100 times 1 kilometer than 1 time 100 kilometers. So the more we can help people to focus on this 1 kilometer and helping them to make sense of the big picture and empowering them, allowing them to try and work together towards that purpose, the better, the more pleasant and fulfilling the working experience it's going to be. And the second fault, because this is related to leadership. So what can leaders do? The second part is what you were saying about there's a lot of people that work for a paycheck, and hey, Jason, there's nothing wrong with that. If somebody's listening to the podcast and they think that, hey, but I feel happy, I feel fulfilled, and that's how I feel when I wake up in the morning. I see a purpose to do that. Hey, that's totally fine. That's awesome. Then you found your purpose, which is get a paycheck. That's fine. But then there's other type of people that they need more than that. And that's where self-empowerment is extremely important for all of us to understand that doesn't depend on our managers or our leaders, on others. That's our own responsibility then to build that link. And to build that link, we need to understand, it's a very, very simple triangulation that I usually talk about. And I call it the fit pyramid. And this fit pyramid is a triangulation between, first of all, understand what's the company's ambition. What's the company trying to achieve? Which are those goals that the company is having, especially for the next 12 months? And also, which are the ethical principles that the company practices? And ethical principles, I'm not talking about those values that you see most of the times in posters hung on the wall. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the behaviors you see around you, especially the bad ones, which are allowed. Are those ethical, just first of all, make sure that they are clear. Which are those ethical principles, how the company makes decisions, and which are the behaviors that are allowed in the company. And then after that's understood, the first step is to see, okay, how is now my role and responsibility? And here's the trick. Most of the people, they go into let me take a look at my contract, the definition of my role. Forget about that. Think about what does your role and responsibility, which kind of value does it bring to the company's ambition? Just make a direct link between your role and your responsibility, and what can you be accountable for to bring value to the company's pain points and what the company expects from you, not because of your role, but because the value you bring to the company strategy. And this is the first hurdle that many leaders even struggle with, that they don't know. Actually, I don't know what my company is trying to achieve. So, one day we had this, this PowerPoint, we had this Teams meeting, but I don't actually know. So that's the first step. Make sure that you understand and there's a clear vision, very clear understanding on the goals and the strategy and how you bring value into it. The second fault is about, okay, now that I understand the ethical principles of my company, how are they aligned with my personal expectations? Because it's never going to be 100%, but am I willing to make those trade-offs? That, on those elements which are not aligned with my values and my ethical principles, because many people try to change companies. But, I did the same mistake when I moved to Finland. I didn't really fit right away. And I really tried to change 5.5 million people so they would fit into my values. But I noticed that after some time, it's going to be difficult thing. So maybe I should make some trade-off and adapt myself. So that's the first thing. Are you willing to trade off and then find a common ground between your own personal ethical values and principles and what the company practices? And the third one, the last one, this is where the secret is. for growth is, okay, now that I understand the ways of working and ethical principles of my company, now that I understand how my role brings value to the company's pain points and challenges, how can those challenges help me grow as a professional? And I've noticed that many times it goes other way around. People go to their manager and ask them, okay, tell me which kind of trainings can I go? What can I do to become a better professional? It's the other way around. It's for each one of us to think, if these are the problems that my company has to solve, the company I'm working with has to solve, if these are the challenges my strategy needs to solve and find solutions for, how can I grow at the same time while I'm solving those challenges? And then find growth opportunities, because then that's how we turn from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset, because then we get excited about those challenges. We understand what's in it for us. We understand the reason why should I be sharing that passion and that hunger. Then I have the drive and the interest to solve the challenges and help the company, because I understand that I'm going to grow. I'm going to learn something new, and I'm not scared of it. Even if it's not comfortable, I need to step out of my comfort zone because there are many things I don't know. I'm going to go for it because I do understand that I can grow while I'm helping the company do that. That, with those two things together, the leadership bringing that understanding on the passion, that dimension of trust and psychological safety, and then empower people to find themselves into the growth path. I think, we can do a lot. And of course, it sounds easy. It takes a long time. But, that would say that this is a very solid basis to build a successful, sustainable transformation.
And as you said, depending upon, it doesn't matter what the team is called, but the C-suite or the executive team and such. So what I hear you saying is, like, a lot of companies can be driven by short-term goals, such as meeting quarterly numbers and such. What I hear you saying is that that's important, but we also needed to align it with the long term. The long term, what is the outcome we're trying to achieve? What is it we are trying to do as a company? As you said, in the long term, whether that's a 5, 10, or 20-year perspective, I guess that depends upon business and industry. But as you said, it's also to bring the company, the employees along with that, to push a message which is based on not just the values of the company, which are important, but the ethical principles of the company, which are much more deeply grounded, I think, in this, as you called it, the human capability, or the PhD. And, if we got really nuts and bolts here, I think it's very important what you were speaking about, it's the psychological safety. Now, you were mentioning coaching and mentoring. So I think in order to create that connective tissue, to create that cohesiveness, I concur with you, because I think it's about creating a feedback culture. It's not, when I mean a feedback culture, I'm talking a feedback culture that is direct and diplomatic, where you can have hard conversations and you don't always have to worry about the delicate flower in the room, because that's a danger in itself. I think also what you're saying is also managing expectations. And sometimes those expectations are going to be hard for people to swallow, especially if it's hard economic times or volatility or uncertainty, but it's trying to align that the best you can and keep people informed. So it's communication. And I think when you're talking about empowering, for me, I've been talking to a lot of soldiers and such, and understanding, because the military is a machine that is based on communication. Everything comes down to communication. And one of the principles that's really been burned into me is centralized command, decentralized control. So centralized command is just that. We tell you the what and the why of what we need to do, but you figure out the how. You are in charge of the implementation. So that empowers people. That allows them to grow, make mistakes. But it's important that the what and the why of the mission, of the objective of the project is well defined for roles and responsibilities, which you're talking about. So a lot of what you've said to me, Marc, really, I concur with it. It really resonates with what I do and what you do. I mean, we may take two different approaches, but I see a lot of parallels there. Have I kind of captured to some extent what you've just articulated?
Yeah, you have, especially on the trust towards, the last example you were talking about. I think it reflects very well what we are talking about. And of course, it doesn't mean to tell people what to do and let them run freely. And that's where agile principles are extremely, extremely beneficial, like having these monthly retrospectives and, quick checks about hey, what's next? And that's also the main difference on, also related to the example you were saying, in those kind of events that you are deploying troops. I'm sure that they don't talk about after they meet 1 week or every month, whatever, timing they utilize. They don't talk about, hey, let's make a root cause analysis and let's understand just what happened last week. But it's all about what are we going to do next? So they focus a lot on the next step. They have this solution mindset to see how can we improve. Instead of saying like, what can we point fingers to see who was the one to blame? It's more about what can we do as a team to solve and get better? How can we improve our deployment capabilities? Next time that we have a mission, how can we do it better? So how to have that dialogue, what you're indicating now is extremely important, to feel safe, to point at mistakes, not to find who's the one to blame, but also learn to talk in a different way about mistakes. It's not just about, daring to speak up and listen up and create a common understanding within the team, but it's also daring to stop digging into finding the one to blame for what has happened, taking a team ownership. And as soon as you have identified the reason, not the person, but the decision that was made wrong and why it was made wrong, then right away to start to think, next time that we have to make the same type of decision, the next time that we are moving ahead, what can we change from our plan? What can we do better as a team? So when the dialogue is on that way, you notice that people are less afraid to speak up and to have those difficult conversations, because they do understand that when they speak up and they bring something that is wrong in the past, people will utilize that as an insight. And that's the difference between information and insight. Information is just pointing at something is wrong. Insight is that using that knowledge to improve for the future and make a difference, make an impact. Because there is zero value saying, okay, yeah, it was Stephanie that, she sent the email too late and nobody could read it. Like, okay, but so how did that help? Hey guys, last time somebody sent an email too late at night. What about if next week we send the presentations the day, 2 days before, so everybody has time to present? Can we commit to that? Yes, that's it. Move on. And then there's no need to start to talk about why somebody sent an email a day before. And just a simple example, but to make the point that when the team focuses on how to improve the decision-making capabilities and utilize this information to transform them into insights, and then become better and better as a team without having the need. And that's the last point. The last point when you were talking that came to my mind is that the personal agendas. When there's no alignment in the team, when people don't share common goals and they don't share the ambition, then you start to see these individuals that they have a different agenda. And then the long-term perspective is not respected. That's why it is important to bring the alignment and also have these quick checks on the team that, hey, is everything that we are doing, what is the value that the things that we are doing bring into the long-term vision? It's just a simple question to bring the dialogue and to make sure that there are no hidden agendas on the team. Otherwise, it's like having a football team with 11 players and having half of the team trying to score a goal in their own goal, which doesn't make any sense, right? In sports, everybody has, they understand what they want to, where to score the goal. So this is why it's so important, this initial step of alignment, bringing that confidence to be able to speak up and bring difficult conversations, and then make sure that there are no, that the common agendas and the private agendas are fully aligned. Otherwise, if you go to battle in those examples you were describing, and somebody wants to have a coffee while the others have to go to south and the other ones want to go to east, good luck with that battle, right? So it's extremely important to bring those elements in place.
Again, I think you've made a lot of salient points. For me, when I see organizations under stress, as you said, it comes back down to the human capabilities. It comes back down to the individual people. That's what it does. When we are under stress, and I'm talking about duress or distress, negative stress, is that people will go into self-preservation mode. It's not that they're negative. No, that's just what we are. That's our brains are wired for survival. As you said, we can blame Steven or Stephanie for the not sending out the email. And that characteristic or a sign that we are in self-preservation mode. We're thinking about ourselves, right? Or teams will fragment. I'm thinking about my people, and you're thinking about that people. And so you get this sort of fracturing, the connective tissue kind of disintegrates, and you see this sort of silo mentality. If not, we find a scapegoat, we find a fall guy to take the heat. And so for me, I think it's very important. Every team will go through this at some point, but for me, I think it's so important to do sort of a case study. Okay, this didn't go so well. Let's understand the issues and the setbacks. What was the problem? if we talk about a current issue, Mark, I think it can become very emotionally engaging because people are emotionally invested, and that can come out in different ways. But I think once a case is being done, whether it was a success or whether it was a failure or just a flop, is to look at it, because then the emotional weight is no longer there. Then we can take it apart and be a little more objective to understand what's going wrong. Because then I think then this becomes an experience we can draw from the next time we're in crisis. Then we can say, okay, guys, remember the last time we went through this? This is what happened. Whether they succeeded or whether they flopped. Is this something you see in yourself from your years of experience working internationally?
Especially, you're spot on there. Especially when you go into this self-preservation mode, and most of us, we are not that highly self-aware. So I would say that now you have hit on the bullseye when saying, okay, at least what I'm hearing, that the first step to start with, it's a self-awareness, to understand before it happens, because when those moments takes place and we go into self-preservation, there is a part of our brain in the prefrontal cortex where all our cognitive capabilities are, most of them are stored, that they just don't work. The brain actually unplugs it literally. When they've been scanning brains, they notice that when we go into that mode, there's no synaptic connections in that part of the brain that allows us to be more cognitive, which means that good luck to come up with good ideas at that stage. So we just go into autopilot, and there is zero chance that we can be cognitive animals at that stage. Even if we think we are intellectual people, when we hit that spot of that you are describing, it just doesn't work. Which means that if we have not prepared beforehand, if we are not self-aware about how we are reacting into those moments, how are our emotions, how are they handled, how do we experience our emotions in that moment, then it is impossible to get anything good out of it. So this initial part of self-awareness and understanding how we react and having a plan ahead to put those what I call team norms. Okay, guys, at some point, guys, ladies and gentlemen. So, let's be inclusive, because ladies and gentlemen and everything in between. So when shit hits the fan, and this because this is going to happen, because if it doesn't happen, we are doing something wrong. Then it's too easy, right? So at some point, if we want to face challenges, if we want to be ambitious, it's going to hit the fan, and there will be tensions. We're going to be tired. There will be stress. We're going to, get into each other's nerves. When that happens, what's the plan? What is the plan B? How do we want to talk to each other? Which are the norms to go into the cage and start to fight in a way that, at the end, we're going to come out stronger? So talk one step ahead. And there's many ways to do that. Usually I have this list of 17 norms that I use. I create it, and then, the team picks up the ones that they feel that is going to help them. And then they agree. They have this kind of symbolic team agreement.
What do you find that are 2 or 3 or 4 sort of most common norms that the teams that you work for pull out?
One, for example, like the most common one is that how can we give feedback, what I call feed forward, more than feedback, but anyway, how can we give feedback to each other beyond the obvious?
Yeah.
So how can we learn to give feedback to each other? Because sometimes, hey, good job, that's not feedback. That's nothing. So how can we, and especially when the job has not, is not reaching our standards. So how are we going to do that? If I say, okay, Jason, look, I know you can perform better. Now the team is being, you are impacting negatively the team because I see you tired or whatever it is, or too stressed. So what am I going to do? How do we agree to approach the situation so I can approach you safely and I can tell, hey, Jason, look, I understand that you are tired, but your performance is not on the level that we agree. So let's talk about it and then see how we can support and help each other. That is one thing, for example, how to give each other feedback in a constructive way and then agree on the methodology. Another one is about, how do we want to have those difficult conversations? Especially, how do we want to address behaviors that are not addressing or not respecting the company values and ethical principles? How do we do that? That's another, team norm that comes very often. Another one is that how are we going to celebrate success? Because we're really good at picking at the mistakes, but most of the teams I'm working with are really, really bad at celebrating success. And it's very hard to build one team spirit and pride in the team if we don't learn to celebrate success as well. And success is not like, hey, let's open a beer one day. No. How are we what kind of ceremonies do we have? And also, how do we celebrate failures? That's another team norm that comes very often. Sometimes we have these ceremonies. We have this when there's a massive failure on a project, then okay, let's celebrate it because we learned. We could kill the project. We understood what was going wrong. Let's get the learnings. Let's have a ceremony where we talk about it and we have like a kind of symbolic letting go ritual. So also emotionally, we can distance ourselves from the failure and then focus on the, polish any kind of emotional conflict that may be because of that. And then let's learn to move on. And then we spend a full day, just with 4 norms, we can spend 6-7 hours talking about it. So then when the shit hits the fan, that, hey, we have a plan. We don't have to go into individual self-preservation. Now we have a team plan that everybody can fall into and feel safe. I was going to just bring out the last element that is like this worked really, really well when the team learns to be vulnerable with each other. And vulnerability, that's why self-awareness and vulnerability are so important. And not just vulnerability to be weak. And that's how people perceive it. We're not talking about being weak. It's being about, when you have a bad day or you're being in your lowest, you dare to go to your mates and talk about it. Or when you have the imposter syndrome, which now it starts to be more people talking about it. But, 99%, especially the most successful people I'm been coaching, they are the ones that experience imposter syndrome the most. We can talk about it later, but it's a very interesting topic, the imposter syndrome. So when somebody's experiencing it, do they dare to open up and say, guys, now this is happening to me. I'm going through this moment where I doubt about myself and I think I'm an imposter. It hasn't been me. All this success we have been having, all these things, actually have no clue what I'm doing. And then that, to be able to have that discussion within the team and comfort each other. So this is, the last part that will enable those team norms to be effective when the team learns to be vulnerable and open. But that requires this self-awareness, which I'm going to come back to it in a while, because I think that is the first thing that we all can become much better at, and where everybody that wants to grow, because remember this, change, it's inevitable, but growth is optional. I always say that.
Change is inevitable, growth is optional. A very salient point that resonates with many of us. Resilient teams, resilient leaders, resilient organization, well, that requires us to be self-aware. To prepare for uncertainty requires that self-awareness, that self-reflection. It's to understand how each of us will react under pressure. And as Marc said, once we understand that, then we can look to establish team norms. As a team, when we are at our tether's limits, what's the plan when we are tired and when we are strained? What are those norms? How do we give feedback? How do we celebrate successes? How do we celebrate failures? And in the second part, Marc and I continue our conversation on self-awareness as it relates to resilience. We talk about self-acceptance and self-compassion, about aligning our goals with our value and our overall purpose. And we just don't talk about it sort of in a very abstract, superficial way, but we get down into the weeds, we get down into the nuts and bolts and truly understand what that means at the most basic of levels and how we can apply that. So let's slip back into the stream for part 2 with Marc Siles. If a company is just hiring completely for competence and skills, that's great to feel the quantitative role. But what I find is that sometimes you'll have a certain person on a team who their social emotional intelligence is so low, they just don't get it and they don't understand it. Or when you give them feedback, even as cautious as you are, as diplomatic and as walking on eggshells to give a person feedback, they will snap. They will take it personally. And I think these individuals, they have very short antennas when it comes to psychosocial emotional intelligence. And I think they're a detriment in order to have what you're speaking about. And that is what all companies need as they move into uncertainty and facing adversity, is people with this type of intelligence, people who are psychosocially and emotionally quite mature. And it's not always, they don't have to always have the top skills, but it's the attitude. It's hiring for attitude, not so much always just the skills. And if you can have the combination, that's the best. And so I completely agree with you. At the same time, it's those individuals that can be a detriment to a team, that can create a toxicity. I think you used the term you used. And that toxicity, if the leader does not have the courage nor the confidence to speak to this person or to maybe move them on for the best for everyone, then I think that poison will stay in the team. So I think it's very important to sometimes have these hard conversations and to make some hard decisions about sometimes moving certain individuals on or moving them away from the team so the team can, coalesce. I don't see this so often, but I do see it every now and then. What is your view or your take on this?
That's an extremely important point, because usually those people, they tend to be, not always, but they tend to be good performers or excellent performers. And that's when it becomes really, really difficult.
Yeah.
Because I'm hearing and seeing that over and over again. Yes, I understand, but he or she or they add a lot of value, or this person is selling a lot, or this person is helping a lot with this goal or this performance, or this person knows a lot. That, yeah, sure. And what is the value that it brings to the higher level goals? And it's always the question, is what I call, instead of feedback or feed forward, is feed up. Why feed up? Because you need to understand, how is this person bringing value to the higher cause, period. If it's toxic to the higher cause, the higher purpose, what we try to achieve in the long term, then it's a no-brainer. Then there's no fit, regardless on the performance. And these are the most difficult calls for a leader to make. Because sometimes, you can have the conversation, and I'm telling you, because it is possible to turn these people around. Because, being honest, I was myself one of them on my early stage of my career, and that's why it brings a lot of value. My struggles and my failures that I went through. My initial years were very difficult because I struggled with that emotional juggle you were talking about. I really struggled. I went through depression. I went all the way, almost to bankruptcy. I almost lost my job. And thanks to somebody opening my eyes, I could turn it around and then become healthy again. I end up in the top 30 most successful business person of the year in Finland and so on. So I could turn it around, but I needed somebody to have that talk with me, to make me understand that, hey, Mark, how you're behaving and how you are leading now your team is not adding value to the higher purpose of what we are trying to achieve. And for me, it was a big eye-opening moment, like, oh, really? Nobody had told me that before. And it helped me so much for somebody to dare to have that tough conversation with me. And at the beginning, I was a bit defensive, but thanks to this person, which, I've been keeping contact since then, it really helped me to open my eyes. Sometimes people don't turn around and they become really stubborn and egos takes over. And then you need to be able to dare to make those hard calls. And if the person, even if it's a top performer, even if they're doing a great job, if it doesn't bring value to the higher level, the higher purpose of what we're trying to achieve, then it's time to let them go. It's not even time to find a new role, and that happens a lot. I've seen that as well. Okay, let's put this person somewhere else in the company. They will create a mess somewhere else. I mean, not doing any favor to a legacy. So maybe
the problem. Yeah.
It doesn't. I've seen that also happening a lot. I don't want to let this person go, so let's just transfer him or her to another team. No, if it is no fit in the company, maybe there will be another company that is going to be a really good fit, the behavior of this person. So those hard conversations, those hard calls, it's...
Well, Mark, I'm going to call you out on something, because I don't think you're one of those people I'm talking about. Because when someone gave you the feedback, you had the psychosocial emotional intelligence to understand that, yes, it may go into conflict to how you saw it as your person, but when that person gave you genuine, sincere feedback, and obviously he or she had credibility and trust in your eyes, you took it on. So sorry, man, but I don't categorize you as one of those individuals, right? Because you took on the feedback, you reflected on it. And again, back to the self-awareness, you took it on as hard as it was. You absorbed it and you integrated it into how you saw yourself, that narrative of how you saw yourself in the bigger picture on how that company has their longer term goals. And then you adjusted your attitude, your behavior, your mindset towards that. But that speaks to me of someone, again, who has social emotional intelligence. But you could have been simply the person where that person could have approached you. And if you had a different psychological makeup, you would just constantly take it personally, but you're not. I'm just calling you out. I think you're quite humble about it, but I just want to call you out on it. It does take a certain sense of vulnerability and an acceptance that, okay, maybe I am not, I don't have the right mindset. And so I have to adjust based upon what the ethical values of this company are or whatever. Right. That's what I just wanted to call you out on that. So I don't think you are one of those individuals I'm trying to categorize.
I could have become, let's put it that way. Yeah, but having this person that helps you to stop the blinds that sometimes we have in our life, and have somebody around you. And that's why, to be able to have people you trust around you that you can listen to and have those tough conversations. Also there, even at work, to learn to have those tough conversations and be able to elevate people. That's what you speak about feed up. There's no point to talk about the person's behavior, because all of us take it personal when somebody points at our behavior. But when somebody helps us reflecting about how that behavior connects with the higher purpose, about, how do you think that is adding value, what we are trying to achieve. And then many times it happens that when I'm having those conversations, because I'm having them quite often, people tell me like, yes, but I don't agree about the agenda that the team has, or I don't share the same vision that the company has. That, okay, that's a different type of conversation. See, then you don't have to talk anymore about the person's behavior, and that facilitates a lot the difficult conversations. And without that alignment, it's very difficult to address anybody's attitude or mindset, because if there's no connection, there's no fit between what we are trying to achieve and what you think we should achieve, then maybe there's no common ground here. So it's easier to have that type of discussion. And then when the person can align him or herself or themselves into that vision, then it's easier to start to talk about, okay, now in the future, what can you change? What can you transform within yourself? How can you grow so you become a better fit? And also we can help you growing as a professional. Then it's a different type of conversation, but the person needs to have that maturity. Otherwise, there's no point to move into what can we do about it conversation if there's no alignment on the higher purpose. That's why, this feed up first step brings a lot of value into helping individuals to move on.
I think that's an elegant segue into self-awareness. For me, I think self-awareness is the key to leading oneself or leading self, because without self-awareness, you're completely blind to your strong sides and the sides that need improvement, what you need to do more of or less of, or something that you need to change or eliminate in the way you're doing things to improve whatever it is you're trying to achieve. Can you speak a little more from self-awareness, from your practice, from your philosophy, and how that works into what you do?
One thing that is extremely important is sometimes we chase, now I'm going to go a bit deep, so, just bear with me, that sometimes we are somehow, we believe, because we have been educated in that way, or whatever, reason you want to give it, we're chasing empty goals, that I call. And empty goals, we're always thinking that in order for me to be fulfilled, to be happy, I need to achieve something that I don't have today. And we are really caught in that trap. Okay, I need a bigger car, and to get a bigger car, I need to get a better job or a higher paid job. So we are always for the big next thing, and that doesn't allow us to enjoy what we're experiencing at the moment. And that initial self-awareness about what we truly want and what we truly have already, that allows us to have a pleasant experience of life, regardless of what we desire, is extremely important. And the first step of self-awareness. And usually I talk about the story of one of my clients that she was talking to me about when she was young. She was helping her parents in a horse farm. She was 10, 12 years old, and she was helping with these tours. It was a long time ago. And one of the tours, there was a guy that was blind that wanted to have a horse tour. And then she was like, she was in charge of the team. And the parents asked her, like, we are not going to be around. Could you take care of the team? She was like, sure, I know the place, I know the area, no problems. So then she took care of the blind guy. And then at the beginning, she started to explain to the blind person, like, hey, look, come on the horse, and then this is how it works. And if you pull here, the horse go to the right. If you pull here, and then, hey, darling, I'm blind. I don't see anybody. I don't see anything. So I trust you. Take the reins, and then, guide me. That's fine. And then she was a bit confused about, why this blind person wants to go on a horse riding tour. I mean, doesn't make any sense. But anyway, if he wants to go, that's fine. And then she started to walk the horse on him. And at some point, this blind person started to ask her, hey, like, I can smell some moss. Like, what's on the ground? Oh, is these herbs? Which color are they? Or these greens? Which tone of greens? well, this green is darker, this one is lighter, then we have these browns there. At the bottom, I can hear some dogs. How many dogs are there? Oh, 5 dogs barking next to the sheep. Okay, which kind of dogs are they? Oh, a shepherd. What about the sky? I can smell some fresh air. And then after a while, this girl, she told me that started to notice that all that beauty that was surrounding her, all this landscape, all this amazing place that she had been experiencing for so many years, and she had totally forgotten and just given for granted. And then she told me, like, okay, Mark, who was the blind in the story? And many of us, we are lost into that wall, and we are so looking outside. What is the next thing? We are feeling so empty, and then we don't realize that we are looking for home, and maybe we're just looking through the window, and we are already home. And that's for me the aha moment I got in my own personal growth experience, to realize that I am already home. I am the person I'm supposed to be. I am who I am. And this self-acceptance was step number 1. Then, after that point comes in to realize that where you are is where you're supposed to be. And you can enjoy fully at that moment. When you're self-aware of that initial place and you can enjoy being where you are, then the whole journey it's transformed, because you understand that the goal is the journey. That's it. The goal is not to get anywhere. The journey itself is the present, is the award, is the goal that we're after. And then all the learnings we get through that journey, that is the main purpose of our growth. But this initial point of the self-awareness to fully embrace what we already have and feel self-content with the ambition and the passion to go after our goals and to continue our growth, this duality between being self-satisfied but at the same time ambitious to get more, it's critical. And sometimes I compare this to dogs. You can throw a tennis ball to a dog, and the dog, even if they are totally satisfied and happy with how they are and who they are, they will run and chase the ball like crazy, time after time. But then when they don't find the ball, now and then, when they come back, I've never seen a dog going like, I'm a miserable dog. I don't deserve to be a dog. I failed catching the ball. I'm going to quit being a dog. I've never seen doing that. What do? They come back. Hey, throw it again. Because they understand that it's a game. It's fun. But they still chase their goals, which is picking up the ball. And how cool would it be in life if we had the same mindset that we're fully joyful and happy and fulfilled with who we truly are, but we still have that passion to run emotionally detached, to run with all that passion after the goals and enjoying the experience of learning and growing. So for me, that this is the step number 1 of self-awareness, to bring that self-acceptance, that compassion into what the growth means, and then there to go and don't be afraid to go after the goals, that emotional detachment. So is that difficult and that simple at the same time?
I have this fascination with brain, studying neuroscience and such, but anyways,
I love it.
Obviously you have the 2 hemispheres, but we have 2 emotional centers. One emotional center is just that, it's emotions, but the other one is experiential. It's what we experience. And as you're talking back to your horse story there with the person who was blind riding the horse, he or she was experiencing through the eyes of the trainer what was going on. When we use that part of the brain, that secondary emotional center, not secondary, but that other emotional center located in the right hemisphere, it's about experiential. Like when you climb a mountain, you look out the vista, or you look up at the starry sky or the weather or whatever, you're present, you're experiencing, and that can bring a sense of awe, elation, different types of emotions than what the left does. I just wanted to kind of link it, because what you're saying is not just some sort of philosophy. This is grounded down into the networks, the electrical, chemical, biological, who we are, and sort of our neural makeups. So I think it's very, very salient, right, what you said.
It's extremely important to understand that and to see like how easy it is to be trapped into that experience and then believing that that's who we are. When we experience that emotion, most of us have the misunderstanding that that's who we are. If I experience stress, we say like, I'm stressed. No, that's not who you are. Think about the neurolinguistics. I am stressed. No, you're not stressed. You're experiencing a stress. It's different. If you believe that that's who you are, if your identity is the emotion, we are doomed. We are screwed. And allow me, we are fucked directly. Then we are really fucked, because that's about it. There's no escape from that misunderstanding. It's just an experience of an emotion. And because it's an experience of an emotion, it's going to come, and guess what? It's going to go. It's okay. But the art of letting go, being self-compassionate about, regardless of the mistakes we make, regardless of the hard moments we are having, to be able to learn to be detached from those emotions. And that Buddhism talks a lot about this, non-stickiness, they call it. But non-stickiness to the emotion, to understand that the emotion is just an insight, it's information. And sometimes negative emotions keep coming back because we don't listen. The negative emotion contains a certain type of insight. And I don't know if it happened to you, but many times when something doesn't go as per planned, the bad feeling goes away after I get it. When I'm capable to step backward and look at it as I was watching a movie at home from my sofa, and I looked at the emotion, that experience on the telly, and then suddenly I get the learning, suddenly that bad experience suddenly goes away, and I start to feel more empowered. But if I feel trapped inside that movie, if I play over and over again the mistake in my mind, man, I'm doomed. And that can keep me awake for many hours at night. So this ability to detach ourselves emotionally from the negative, especially emotions, and be able to get the learnings and move on and letting go. It's so important. That's what I've seen in most of my clients when they are having these really tough periods. That's what happens 99% of the time. They identify themselves with the negative emotion, and it's so hard to let go.
And I
for some
think
reason.
When I used to, this is a couple of decades ago, but when I used to work with trauma, we used to tell people that emotions are just chemical messengers. And there's no good or bad emotions. They're just on a spectrum. And depending upon where on the spectrum, or depending upon the chemical recipe, it's signaling something to you. And so one of the reframes I helped, and I don't work with trauma anymore, but one of the reframes I use is to tell people, look, emotions are just, as you said, they're information, and then information is being delivered to the dashboard of your brain, and they're not instructions. They're not instructing you what to do. When the messenger comes, when that information comes, whether it's elation or adventure or worry or overwhelm, however it shows up, look at it, analyze it, and understand, what do I want to do with this information? They're not instructions telling you go down that road. No, it's information. And once I think what you're saying there, Marc, is it's you hit the nail on the head here, is that it's seeing the emotions as information and not as instructions allows you to move from a subjective to an objective point of view. And at the end of the day, that's what self-awareness is, or self-compassion. It's about being objective to what you're feeling. And, you can't stop emotions. Emotions will show up, and it's okay to feel whatever you're feeling. The question is how do you choose to move forward with that emotion? Like the frustration, do you want to go down the rabbit hole and just constantly get agitated and irritated? Or do you wish to do something constructive with that frustration and stay out of that rabbit hole? And that's a very simplistic way of looking at it. But I just wanted to share that reframe because I completely agree with what you're saying.
And by the way, we need to keep in mind, totally agree with you, Jason. And something to keep in mind is that sometimes those emotions doesn't come just from failures and mistakes. And I came to realize after I've been working, for the last 10 years with highly successful people, that a lot of times these not so pleasant experiences come from successes, which is very interesting. And I've noticed a lot of successful people that starts to feel like a fraud because most of these big breakthroughs and very successful people, they have a lot of these, flow experiences. They go into this mode that's, they go into flow, then things start to happen. And because they go into this flow, which is the kind of experience where you don't even sense your own body. It's like, you would be somewhere else, but you are here. I guess that most of us have been through this kind of flow moments at some point. When something magic happens, then they turn back and they go like, who's done that? Not me. I wasn't here. Right?
Yeah.
And then suddenly, like, oh my God, people will catch me. I have no clue how I have done this. Actually, it wasn't because I cannot explain it. I have no clue what I'm doing. How the hell am I going to repeat this success? And then, also sometimes success can drive especially highly successful people because they start to put more pressure on themselves. That, okay, how am I going to keep on repeating this success? How do I make people believe that I'm a successful person? And that's when they start to get trapped into these false thoughts and this false identity, instead of being able to just enjoy the process and just, keep on being who they are. So, just to bring the angle that we're not talking just about when we make mistakes and when things don't go well, which is a massive source of learning, because otherwise, we wouldn't have learned to walk, right, as a kid, if we hadn't fallen many times, but we keep on forgetting about that. But anyway, but it's also when we, after trying for a long time, when we achieve success, then we might start to wonder, how did we do that? It's so hard to explain.
Agreed. So, resilience at the end of the day is about learning from your experience. And resilience is not just facing adversity, but it's also understanding success and understanding how to handle that success, however it shows up. So resilience is just that. Regardless if you characterize an experience as negative or positive, the question is, again, back to what you were talking about, growth mindset, is how do I learn from this and how do I integrate it into who I am, part of my narrative? Again, whether it's a failure or success, resilience shows up in both categories. What I'd like to do, I'm wary of time and respectful of your time there, Marc. At the time of recording, you've just been awarded by the president of Iceland an innovative approach to educate and empower leaders. I was wondering, could you speak a little to this? What exactly this is? I just thought, for me, I flagged it as quite important. So I'd just like you to speak to it a little.
I'm so proud about it. It's one of the projects I'm driving in Iceland for a big company there. It's been awarded it. So what I feel very good about it, that is my client that presented the project, and the project got awarded for what you just said, being innovative on that development approach, and it's related to the growth agents, I was talking before. So what I do in some company, like instead of coming with a big team of consultancy, I just go in and I try to teach and enable people from the inside just to become more resilient and to be able to become those catalysts I was talking at the beginning of our chat today. So it's as simple and as complicated as that. It's like a 9-12 month program, depends on the company, where we work with people to teach them skills to be resilient, to work with solution development skills, communication skills, coaching skills, how to help others to grow, how to help peers to go, how to become good sparring partners in companies to build those bridges that companies need to be more cooperative and co-creative. And then the last part, we have a lot of modules during the year about self-awareness. Just all these things we have been talking. So we teach them how to be more self-aware about how to scale and utilize your strengths, how to be able to distance yourself from what I call the parasite voice, so that imposter syndrome, how to deal with it. And at the same time, how to replace the parasite voice with empowered voice, because we have both, right? Usually I say we have both. We have the parasite voice and the empowerment voice, but which one is going to win is the one that you fit the most. That's simple. So then also we teach those tools to help people feel more self-empowered, not just to help the company grow, but as well to feed their own growth and those of others around. And for me, it's been very, very special award just because it recognizes a team effort. This is not just awarding me, which it's awarding the project and rewarding the effort that we made together with this client. And it's what was amazing. It was to see after going back to this company to see how people felt proud of holding that. The feeling of owning that together. That was really, really, really sweet. So, and I consider it a big achievement just because of that, of being this massive team collective achievement.
Yeah. Because it comes back down to what you were talking about at the top of this conversation, was that human bridge that you guys do down in Barcelona. A human tower.
The towers.
Towers, sorry, about the passion, hunger,
would be interesting,
and the drive,
a human
right?
bridge. Yeah. Yeah.
That's 2024's mission.
I'll propose that. But yeah, it's linked to the towers. Yeah, that's right.
If a company's interested or a department is interested in your services or your company's services, so you said it's a 9 to 12 month program. So if we could just talk briefly, sort of nuts and bolts, do they meet 3-4 times? Is it offsite? How long is a workshop or a session?
Yeah, it's like four modules.
4 modules
in between the 4 modules that happens like every 3, more or less like every 2-3 months. And in between modules there is some short follow-ups of half a day to make sure that everybody gets. They are small teams, so we are usually certifying between 20 to 40 people at the same time. But then we have different groups of 9 people, so they can get like one-on-ones with me, and then get that psychological support as well through growth and development. So we meet 4 times on overnights, on 2 to 3 days together. 1.5 to 2 days. And then we have these follow-ups in between, and then with me, and then they have like concrete projects that they work on right away related to the strategy, so they can bring results and impact into the company from day one. But at the same time, I work with executive team because, as I was saying before, if we only work with that level of growth agents, many times things start to change in the company, and then leaders get scared because they don't understand change. So then I'm working with the kind of their own version of growth agents for the leadership team when I'm putting them through transformation exercises as well. That's more or less how it works in a high level. And then they there is a contact point between the executive team and the growth agents. So kind of they start to become a direct link between the strategy and a good source of catalyst for the strategy. So there's a direct link between the leaders and the agents.
Excellent. We're just about to wrap up this conversation, this stimulating conversation. I was wondering if there's any last piece of advice or wisdom you'd like to share with our listeners today, Marc.
It's a great question. For me, let me share with something, one last personal thing, because a lot of things that I'm doing are linked to my own struggles in life and what has been helping me to become the person I am today. So it's very linked to my own journey. For me, the main aha moment, it was linked to my grandma. One of my grandmas was detained back in Franco times in Spain for helping the wrong side, if you want to call it somehow, if there was a right or wrong side. But she was in a hospital helping patients, and then she was detained, and she was accused of being a traitor, and she was supposed to be shut down by Franco troops. And she just accepted her faith. She was in jail, and then she was extremely talented on on theater and poems, and that was her passion. So then she decided to spend the rest of her days just doing what she likes, her passion. And then very soon back then, people couldn't write down that much. Couldn't write down and read in Spain back then. That it wasn't that common. So then suddenly, when the soldiers and the guards of the prison found out that my grandma was good at it, they started to ask her to write down poems for the girlfriends or the wives or the beloved ones, so they can kind of they could kind of impress them. And then my grandma started to write down poems for them, and I was like, when my grandma was telling me this story, I was so confused. Like, what? But they were the guys that were gonna shoot you down. Yeah. But well, it was my passion, it was my talent, so I just did it for them. I put my talent to serve others, and that's fine. It made me feel good, and I was helping them. And then once per year, lo and behold, there was this tradition that somebody in the prison once per year, through Franco's birthday, would be forgiven and not be killed. And then my grandma became such an empowered figure just because of she was putting her talents to help others. So that year, lo and behold, was the one chosen, and she was let go. She wasn't killed, and she was also shocked because that she never intended. She was never doing that to be released. She was doing that because of pure love. That was the source of what she was in, pure love. When I look back to my grandma's story, I think that this has been for me the biggest learning of what I believe that is success for me. First of all, connecting with my talent, with my asset, nurturing it, polishing my skills, and then putting them to serve others, not to myself.
That's a brilliant story.
That's for me the biggest thing that I would like to share with, the last thing I would like to share. That's why self-awareness, getting in contact with our true self, and then putting that true self to serve others, then life will bring what you need. Maybe not what you want, but life will bring what you need for that moment. So that is the last thing I want to share. Some
permutation of what you want, hopefully. Yeah. Well, Marc, thank you very much for your time today. I really appreciate you sharing your stories, your experience, and the work you do, the great work you do with different corporations. And this is not just in Finland, this is international, because obviously you've just got this amazing award from the president of Iceland at the time of recording. So congrats on that. And thank you very much I'm very grateful for the time we spent today.
Thanks a lot, Jason. I enjoyed a lot the conversation. I'm looking forward to see us, to follow the next chapters and then to see your own growth path, which I find it extremely fascinating. I think we share the passion for the human brain. So I'm learning a lot also from you. So thanks a lot for sharing your wisdom.
Well, folks, that was the brilliant Marc Siles. Marc, a big personal thank you from me to you for spending a time with me today. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and your experiences. When I was listening to the episode in post-production, when I was editing this, I don't know how many pages of notes I made. A lot of quotes. So it was a very enriching, enlightening, and very engaging conversation. So thank you very much for that. I really appreciate it. I'm definitely going to have you on for part 2. Well, folks, if you are interested in contacting Marc Siles, which I highly recommend if you're looking for transformation, if you're looking to spice up your team, to figure out your purpose, the values, to find redirection, to talk about strategy, which he is a master of, well, Mr. Marc Siles is your man. I will leave all his contact information in the show notes, as well as all of his social media links. Well, we have reached the end of another episode, another week. As usual, if you could please recommend to 2 colleagues, 2 friends, 2 family members about this podcast, about spreading the word of resilience. And if I could ask you to please rate, subscribe, and review this episode as well as the podcast, you'd be doing me a big favor. You'll also be able to find my contact information also in the show notes. So as usual, those of you that share your comments and feedback, I'm always open and I always appreciate it. So please, if you've thought about it, hit that send button and share your thoughts with me. But until next week, till the next time we meet again to continue this conversation about resilience and well-being, keep well, keep strong, and we'll speak soon.